Hello and welcome to Cooking with Master Gardeners, Penn State Extension. My name is Lisa Kraft.
And my name is Jane Neary. Today we're going to feature vegetables that we would grow in the garden at the Boys and Girls Club. When we're cooking with the kids, we always try to include them because we want them to try them and know how to use them in cooking. We normally are standing among the kids, direct and instructing them and supervising the cooking, but we obviously can't do that right now. So this video is geared for families to cook together. So we hope you will join your kids in cooking in the kitchen. Today we're going to cook black bean and corn salsa along with chicken quesadillas. You'll notice that we have a variety of colors of vegetables because we try to stress the nutritional value of the things that we cook. So each color has different nutrients and vitamins in them. So Lisa's going to get you started with how we start with the kids every day that we cook.
Each time that we cook, we want to make sure that we stress health and safety. So the first thing we always want to do is wash our hands. So there are many hand sanitizers that are out right now, or of course we could always use good old soap and water. When you wash your hands, you want to make sure that you wash them for at least 20 seconds. That's as long as it takes to sing happy birthday 2 times. Make sure you wash the bottoms of your hands as well as the tops and between your fingers. Not only do we want to wash our hands, but we also want to make sure that we wash all our fruits and vegetables. So here on our menu, we already washed all our peppers, tomatoes, limes, all beforehand. We even rinsed off our beans. So make sure before you do any cooking, you wash off all of your foods beforehand.
When we work with the kids, we always stress that we work with tools and not toys. If the kids start playing with the knives, for instance, we will tell them to step back and maybe not even cook for the day, depending on how much they're interrupting and how dangerous they get. Most of the time we do not have the problem, but you constantly have to remind them they are tools. We use a variety of knives at the Boys and Girls Club, and it's important that you pick knives for the kids that fit their hands. A lot of kids have small hands. We're working with young kids. So these came from the dollar store. They're very small, but they're sharp. And so you might use something like this. If you have kids with larger hands, you might pick a bigger knife. When we're using knives, we tell them not to pick them up until we tell them to. So it's important that you do that. The other thing that you should know is these knives have a straight edge to them. This one, if you can see it, has a serrated edge. It's a little bit toothy. And we're going to use the toothy ones, the serrated edge knife, to cut tomatoes for the salsa that we're making. So I'm going to show you how to do it now. We're using plum tomatoes. I'm going to call them Roma tomatoes, which is what they are. We use them because they're not as watery and they're more meaty, easier to work with when you're cooking anything. So you're going to take the top off the tomato, you're going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to take the knife and go around the top and cut out the middle. I want to get all the seeds and most of the water out, because otherwise you're going to have watery salsa or watery anything that you use with tomatoes. So I actually put that on a paper towel to dry it out a little bit. And then you're going to cut it in strips. I'm going to do small strips. Everything in the salsa needs to be about the same size as the beans and the corn that go in. So we're going to cut strips that are about a ½ inch. This is going to make them, when we cut the strips, it'll make it the right size for the salsa. Do the smaller ones. They can use a smaller knife to do this. When you cut, you're going to curve your fingers, fold what you're cutting, and slice through. You're going to let the knife do the work. You're not going to chop, you're going to slide. Then let the blade of the knife do the work.
Okay, our next ingredient is going to be peppers. We're going to use 2 different colored peppers in order to make the salsa look nicer. So we already cut up our red pepper, and right now I'm going to show you how to cut up a green pepper. But peppers also come in orange and in yellow. Any of them would look really nice in this recipe. To cut our peppers, one of the things you might look for are the big lobes in the pepper. if you start at the top and cut between the lobes, and cut like that, you'll leave a lot of the lighter, whiter area behind in the pepper. This part of the pepper is bitter, and you don't want to use that in your recipe. So if I cut around, this pepper has 3 lobes. I'm going to try to leave the vein part, the white pithy part, behind, and use the rest of the pepper. Like that. And it also leaves the seeds sitting in the middle. Then I'm going to cut it into long strips. So I'm also going to do this very similarly to how the tomatoes were done. We're going to cut it into about 1/2-inch strips. And then if you're working with your child, the child puts it there and then cut them into little squares like this. Again, let you both do the work. So we like them all to be little bite-sized cubes. Again, make sure you share the work with your child. Okay, so I have finished chopping up, or actually dicing, my green pepper. And here's the red pepper. We have already added the tomatoes into the bowl. So I'm going to add the diced red pepper. And now add the green pepper. And we have our first 3 ingredients.
I'm going to add the black beans, black bean and corn salsa, black beans. They come in a can. We have rinsed them and drained them so that they're dry. And you could use either a colander or a sieve, whatever you have at home to do that. Black beans, a can of black beans goes in. This is really a dump job. It also calls for corn. You cannot buy corn this time of the year, but you can use either canned corn, and if you do, again, you're going to do it the same as the beans. You're going to rinse it and drain it, okay, and use the whole can of whole corn. This is frozen corn. It's about 2 cups. I cooked it according to the directions. I did it in my microwave, but I cooked it the least amount of time that they said on the directions, because you want the corn to be a little bit toothy. You don't want it mushy. So the black beans went in, the corn goes in. And the only other thing we have to put in and cut up is a jalapeno pepper. The jalapenos are hot pepper, but they're not the hottest pepper that you can buy. In fact, they tend to be mild. But you still have to be careful when you're cutting them up. When you're working with them, you want to cut them in half, and then you want to take, I'm going to use a small knife. You want to cut the veins out and seeds, because that's where the heat is in the pepper. If you like something really hot, leave them in. You can eat them, there's nothing wrong with that. It just increases the heat. You could also use a hotter pepper if you really, really like heat. But when we're working with the kids, we don't want really hot food because we don't think they'll eat it. So make sure when you do it, you're going to make sure underneath your fingernails to get that juice out. And be careful not to go near your eyes for a while, because it will burn. Again, we're cutting strips, same size, 1/2 inch. But this time we're going to cut this even smaller, because we're going to really mince this, which means cut it in a very small piece. So when you're doing things that are hot, you tend to make smaller pieces so people don't get a lot of heat in their mouth at one time. So we're doing small pieces, smaller than before. And we're going to do the whole pepper, just like this. And it's going to go in the bowl with the other ingredients.
Our salsa has a little marinade that goes with it, and we're going to do the marinade now. Our marinade consists of lime, oil, and salt. So first, a lime. To get the juice out of your lime, the first thing you want to do is roll it. So put a little pressure on your lime and roll it back and forth. And helps crush it a little bit inside, and when you go to juice it, it'll be a little bit easier to do. Now, this takes about
You need to zest it first.
a quarter of a cup.
Sorry.
And so we're going to use about 1.5 limes in order to get a quarter of a cup. So we already did squeeze 1 lime already in here. And so I need about another half of a lime. But before I do that, in order to intensify the flavor, we're going to use a little bit of the outside of the lime, and that's called the zest. And what I simply am going to do is just take off the very outside layer of this before you hit the white part that's right underneath that, which is bitter. So in order to do that, this is a little tool called a zester or a microplane. And what I simply do is rub this against it. And I go like this, very gently. And if you look at that, it just takes off the very outside layer of this lime. And if you can see, this zester is very much like a small grater. So if you didn't own a zester, you could use your grater that you have at home and just run this along the outside of the grater. Again, you want to be very careful that you only use just the outside layer. Right underneath that outside layer, you lose your flavor and it becomes very bitter. So I'm doing that, and if you could look inside here, you'll just see little pieces of the outside. Okay, so we have finished zesting this lime, and as you can see, I've taken off the outside edge, and I'm going to put that final bit of zest into there. And now I'm going to cut this in half. Finish squeezing my lime in. Okay, if you need to, you could always take a spoon, run it along the inside to get that final little piece of juice out. All right, let's see how we did here. In order to make sure you have an accurate measurement, you want to make sure you're looking at this eye level, and it is 1/3 exactly. All right, so we're going to take our lime zest and our lime juice and pour it over our vegetables. And the next thing we need to add is our oil. You want to use a neutral type of oil. We're using canola oil today. And we need 1/4 cup of oil. And there we are. And our third ingredient is salt. And 1 teaspoon of salt. There we go. You can serve this marinade right away, but we find that it tastes best if you let it sit overnight in order to absorb all the flavors inside.
The salsa will actually keep in your refrigerator for about a week, and it won't last that long because it tastes really good. We're going to stop now, and we're going to clean up, and we're going to come back and make chicken quesadillas with you.
We're ready to do the second half of our recipe. We're making chicken quesadillas. So we're going to do half of a recipe today. Normally, if you're going to do a full recipe, you would need 3 cups of shredded chicken. Now, we have chicken thighs here, and that's what we're going to work with today. Thighs are generally pretty tasty to put into a recipe. You could buy rotisserie chicken, or you can make chicken on your own. You could cook chicken in the oven. In that case, you'd like to maybe cook it at 325 for an hour. And if you do cook your chicken, take the thighs, and the first thing you want to do is remove the skin, which I have done right here. And you want to debone it. So I'm taking all the meat off the chicken, leaving behind chicken bone. And here I have the meat. And what you want to do is either shred it, which means you would pull it apart like this, pulling it apart into bite-sized pieces, or you could roughly cut it. Which means taking your knife and cutting it into bite-sized pieces. Alright, so I have roughly cut up our chicken now. And since we're making 2 quesadillas today, I'm going to take our cup and a half of chicken and separate it into 2 piles. So that looks about 2 equal piles. I'm going to put it on our tray so we get everything ready to make our quesadillas. After I do this with our chicken, our next ingredient will be cheese. Remember, our recipe that we're going to give you actually makes 4 quesadillas. Today, we're making 2. And now we're going to use our cheddar jack cheese. Jane, does it make any difference what kind of cheese we use on here?
The cheddar jack is the best to use. You can get hotter cheese if you want, if that's what your taste is. But the cheddar jack is really a good cheese for it. It melts nicely. And it's finely shredded, so it melts nicely in the quesadillas.
So I'm taking out 4 ounces of cheese. This is an 8-ounce pack. We're doing half recipe, so 4 ounces. And again, I'm going to take our cheese and divide that in half. Half for each quesadilla. Makes a nice melted amount. Alright, next we're going to take a look at some of our vegetables.
I've already cut the peppers that we're going to use. Again, we're using sweet bell peppers and jalapenos. The jalapenos have been minced in smaller pieces, and these are kind of bite-sized pieces that we're using. We're using 10-inch tortillas. If you don't have a frying pan big enough for this, we're going to use an electric frying pan today. Ordinarily, we would do it on top of the stove with a regular frying pan. But if you don't have a frying pan that's big enough to hold the 10-inch tortilla, they come in 8 and 6. So if you're going to do that, just buy smaller tortillas, and then you're just going to make smaller piles of things so that you're evenly distributing the meat and the vegetables. So these are 10-inch tortillas. Okay, we're also going to use, in addition to the peppers, we're going to use scallions. Scallions are in the onion family. They are not as strong as an onion. They won't make you cry. You can put it next to your nose and it wouldn't hurt you. But it gives it a little bit of an onion taste to it. These have been washed, and what I'm going to do is cut off the root, and then I'm just going to slice them into pieces about the same size as pepper. And we're using 1 scallion per quesadilla. While I'm doing this, Lisa's going to put some spinach on the base of the tortilla.
We're going to place a layer of spinach on half of the tortilla. What I like to do is take off the stems and just place a single layer along the bottom, like this. It stops the tortilla from becoming too wet. Also adds a nice layer of nutrition and a little bit of crunch. Now we're going to add our chicken. Place it right on top of the spinach on half the tortilla. top of that goes our cheese. That will look delicious and taste so good after it's melted.
Now we're going to add the vegetables to the tortilla. And remember, we've separated them into piles, so I'm taking one pile of jalapenos. I'm going to spread them out on top. And lastly, we're putting the scallions on. Remember, they taste a little bit like an onion, but they're not as strong. But they give a really good flavor to it. We got a really full quesadilla here. Okay, next we're going to fold it up carefully. And we're using, as I said, we're using an electric frying pan so we can show you what we're doing. It is set with medium heat, so if you're doing it on top of your range, you're going to set your burners for medium. You place it in to it's an oiled, I put oil on the bottom so it wouldn't stick. And I'm going to put something on top of it to flatten it down. So whatever you want, have another pot. And there we go. You want it flat because you want it to cook. And tunis, after this, we're going to turn it over and cook it for another 2 minutes. Okay, this is ready to turn over. I'm using 2 spatulas. This is a very, very full quesadilla. So I'm going to use 2 and try and keep everything inside it. Flip it over. Yes. Okay. 2 more minutes and it'll be ready to eat. We've taken the first quesadilla out of the pan. When you're making these, you need to put the ones you've made in a 200-degree oven just to keep them warm until you get them all done and everybody can sit down and eat all at once. When you take it out, you're going to use, you could use a pizza cutter if you wanted to. I'm using chef's knife. In this case, I'm just going to lock it to cut it into wedges. Somebody's going to get a big wedge. I didn't think you did. Okay, well, I put the other quesadilla on to cook. Lisa's going to tell you how to serve them.
Doesn't this look delicious? There we have our beautiful quesadillas. So if you'd like to give somebody 2 nice wedges of those. And our salsa. We'll put some here into a bowl. If you'd like, you could put some salsa right on top of this and serve it that way if you'd like. Or you could also put some sour cream on top of your quesadilla. We like to eat ours with a couple of chips. Why not? And that way, you have a really nice meal.
We hope you've enjoyed cooking with us, and we really hope you enjoy cooking with your kids. It's not a hard thing to do. I also want to tell you that the salsa is really good as a snack for kids, and you would eat them with the corn chips at any time. Again, it keeps for a week. So enjoy your cooking and enjoy your eating.
Time to eat. See you next time.